here's the one part that concerns me. It shows they're supposed to show the staff and verify that they've been diligent in their job search. But then it's going to allow for suggested workshops, which our Pikes Peak Workforce Center does well. And might I add that I talked with Joe Rasso, who's the new head of our Chamber EDC group, and he has some great ideas about how, at this point in time, when they're receiving state benefits, to collaborate with our Pikes Peak community colleges to, at that point in time, say, what are the needs within our community, jobs that need to be filled? Well, let's start training for those right away. You know, let's do this right on the very front end to make sure that these people are getting the skills to fill the jobs that we need filled in this particular area in El Paso County. So it allows for the workshops, for the skills development programs, but then in assisting in finding other resources for which the individual may be eligible. Kind of an interesting thing that they're supposed to do at this stage in the game after a year and a half. Now, being a former educator, I happen to know and believe that prevention and not expensive intervention is the key to success. I agree with Joe Rasso. I agree with our community leaders and say, wouldn't it be wonderful if we implemented this at the beginning of the job search instead of now asking Charlie's Pikes Peak Workforce Center to implement this at the very end? And I think Charlie would agree with this. We've talked about this. He'd love to have this at the beginning. So it appears that up until now, an unemployed person would have been able to collect benefits for 73 weeks without having to prove in any tangible way that they are actually seeking employment. So funding approval of up to $261,630 being sought by the Pikes Peak Workforce Center would pay for the 5 additional staff to administer the additional requirements contained in House Resolution 3630. I think it's unusual that Congress actually this time would offer to fund a mandate. It's pretty interesting. And I do realize that the following. I do realize, Charlie, that the state of Colorado is going to send you an additional 250 to 500 applicants per week that must be processed in the time period allotted by the state. You don't get to turn them away. You have to accept them. You still have to work with them. And I understand that the current employees at the Pikes Peak Workforce Center are going to be required to carry this extra load if the 5 temporary employees, and I say the temporary, and I just want to say that Charlie and I talked about this, they are only funded as long as these funds are there, okay? They do not receive benefits. They are temporary workers. They do not get any retirement funding from this. They don't go into the retirement system for El Paso County at this point in time. And I think, Charlie, you had also stated the reason that we did not, because I asked you why we didn't contract out for this. And I think you indicated that if we did, it would be an additional 35% on top of that. Okay, say that one more time.
Yes, it would be excess of $300,000 to use a staffing agency, their upcharge.
Okay, so an upcharge from a staffing agency.
Yes.
Okay, so that's why we did not go through a staffing agency outside, and we are going to utilize temporary workers.
That's correct.
Okay, all right. And I understand that if this is not funded, the Pikes Peak Work Center for staff will, out of necessity, probably have to drop some other programs that we do to be able to comply with this program, because you're required to. I also realize that creative solutions and not criticism solve problems. You know, so I began asking myself, are there community volunteers who might step up to the plate to assist for the next 6 months? People with the skill set of this development specialist, workforce development specialist, that might come in and volunteer and help these people find jobs. So I had to ask myself, are these additional requirements really going to motivate and incentivize unemployed citizens to find a job? Or does this just help prolong the government paycheck until the benefits have been exhausted and then the recipient is really potentially incentivized to find a job at that point in time? And since this is an extension of the first law passed in 2008, well, what happens after the November election? Is there going to be a push to continue the unextended benefits beyond the maximum currently allowed? Or will the government finally start taking steps to assure job growth by, I don't know, eliminating red tape, fear of the unknown of health benefit costs, steps that have many said will encourage job creation. How will we know that the funds expended for these additional staff will have provided a cost-benefit analysis to the taxpayers that are bearing this cost? Well, instead of what our current administration is doing, just looking at ways, they should be looking at ways to really quit putting up roadblocks in the way of private business and find a way to incent them to hire more employees. And there's also, and some of you, if you've done any research, know that there's a massive new employer tax that's coming out and is scheduled for the end of the year. Well, I mean, that's a great way to encourage hiring, isn't it? Is to tax the businesses more?